She left her scarf on the piano bench again. That ridiculous thing. Ivory white with a woven black spiral that curled like smoke, always draped where it didn't belong. It used to irritate him, the way she left traces of herself like breadcrumbs across the house. Earrings on the windowsill, lipstick-stained mugs on bookshelves, half-drunk wine glasses at the foot of the bed. But today, it was the scarf that stopped him. Not the sight of it, not even its presence, but the way it lay twisted, looped through itself, as if someone had knotted it absent-mindedly and then changed their mind halfway. A loose knot, pulled tight at one end and slack at the other, not like her usual way of carelessly tossing it. He walked past it, didn't touch it, didn't even look directly at it again. But something about it clawed into the base of his skull and anchored there. He went to the kitchen to clear his mind. The countertop gleamed, unnaturally so, cleaner than it ever had been when she was in charge of tidying. The sponge was dry. The dish rack empty. No used pan from breakfast. No bowl from her usual midday cereal. It was only 4 p.m. She was home today. She always worked from the upstairs office on Wednesdays. She always left a trail, even when she claimed she didn't have time to cook. But now the place looked scrubbed. Sterile. He walked back through the living room, past the scarf again. That knot. The way it sat like a forgotten gesture. He glanced toward the hallway mirror, and that's when he noticed the smudge. Not a fingerprint. No, this was horizontal, like someone's back or shoulder had grazed it. Bare skin. A curved streak, just above waist height, maybe where someone had leaned in to kiss against the glass. It was faint, almost invisible in the daylight, but the late sun caught it and made it glint like a whisper he wasn't supposed to hear. He stared at it too long, pulled out his phone, scrolled aimlessly for a distraction, opened the home security app, not because he suspected anything, just habit, just the same way you check your bank account even when you know what's in it. He thumbed through the footage. Monday, Tuesday, today, noon. She had ordered sushi. The delivery guy came up the steps, handed her the bag. She wore leggings and a hoodie. Normal. She closed the door. He tapped forward in increments, 30 seconds at a time. At 12:37, the door opened again. Not to take out the trash. Not to grab a package. Just opened. She stepped out, hair down now, not in the bunch she'd had earlier. Lipstick on. No hoodie. Just a slim, backless black dress she hadn't worn in years. Her phone was in her hand. She smiled into it as she turned around and walked out of frame. The door shut behind her. He didn't pause the video. Didn't rewind. He just stood there, the silence of the house pressing into his ears like pressure underwater. The scarf. The smudge. The pristine kitchen. That dress. She hadn't worn it since their anniversary 2 years ago. Said it didn't fit anymore. He walked upstairs, feet heavy like they were made of concrete. Past her office. Empty. The screen on. Email inbox open. One message still unread, highlighted. He didn't enter. Didn't touch the mouse. Just stood in the doorway and read the subject line through the glass. Modeling interest. Let's talk further? The sender was just a first name. Casual. Confident. Male. He turned, walked into their bedroom. The bed was made. Another rare thing. On her side, a faint indent, like someone had sat there. Not deep enough to have slept, but recent. He crossed to his side, sat down. Felt the mattress shift. There was a scent on the pillow that wasn't his or hers, an unfamiliar cologne, expensive, sweet but dark, with a peppery edge. Not overpowering, just faint enough that you'd only notice if you were looking for it. He closed his eyes, breathed in once. Then again. His chest didn't rise or fall. He just sat there, still, motionless, a statue of a man who wasn't supposed to be awake yet. He wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would have given her too much power. This wasn't rage. It was calculation. And in that exact moment, he knew, not thought, not suspected, not feared, but knew. Something had happened. Something had crossed a line. And it wasn't the lie itself that gutted him. It was the precision of it. The care she'd taken to erase her tracks, thinking it would all go unnoticed. The neatness. The silence. As if her betrayal had manners. The scarf lay twisted at the base of the stairs behind him, its spiral pattern looped like a noose too lazy to tighten. She started humming again. That was the first thing he noticed. Little fragments of melody, tuneless and soft, scattered through her mornings like confetti that didn't belong. At first, he thought it was pleasant, normal even. But it was always the same loop, no lyrics, just a rise and fall that sounded too practiced, too deliberate, as if it were designed to fill the air between them. Something to ward off silence, not soothe it. She kissed him goodbye every morning like she always had, but now she missed. Slightly off-center. Lips grazing the cheek instead of the mouth. A gesture reduced to muscle memory. He'd watch her from the window as she walked to the car, still humming that same tune. She always checked her reflection in the driver's side mirror now. Always smoothed the same piece of hair behind her ear, even when it wasn't out of place. Then she'd sit in the car for a minute or two before pulling out. Never calling, never texting, never looking back. She called it a phase. Work stress. Needed more time for herself. Yoga. Therapy. Self-expansion, she'd said, with that rehearsed smile she'd started using lately. The one that looked like it had been glued on in a hurry. The kind of smile that made her eyes colder instead of warmer. He tried to believe it. Tried to nod and listen and say the right things. Gave her space. Gave her calm. Gave her everything except the one thing she'd stopped asking for. Honesty. Her phone changed first. New passcode. New background. Different ringtone. She laughed it off, said her old one had been buggy. It's just a phone, she told him, too quickly. You're so paranoid, babe. He didn't ask again, but he watched her tilt the screen away from him when she typed. Watched her check it in the bathroom now, lights off, screen lighting up her face like a ghost in the mirror. He started counting how often she used the word growth. It came up in every conversation. Her new book was about growth. Her gym routine was about growth. Her new therapist talked about growth through detachment. Everything was unfolding, expanding, blooming, except him. He was stuck in the same place, apparently. Too practical, too grounded. You're always the anchor, she said once, with a laugh that didn't sound like it belonged in the moment. But maybe I'm trying to learn to float. That one lodged in his throat for days. She forgot their dinner reservations. Not the date, just the time, she said. But she showed up in a dress she hadn't worn in years. The one she'd said was too clingy now. She didn't apologize. Just walked into the restaurant 25 minutes late, kissed him on the cheek like she was clocking in, and talked about how the city lights felt different this year. He watched her sip her wine and talk about boundaries like she was reading a script. He didn't speak much that night. Just nodded and studied her. Her eyes flickered to her phone every few minutes, even when it didn't buzz. Then came the laugh. The one that broke the rhythm. It was late, maybe 1:30 in the morning. He had gotten up for water. The hallway was dark. Her voice floated down the stairs from the living room. A quiet laugh, too soft for the television. He paused halfway down. She was on the couch, curled up with her phone, screen held close. Not a laugh for a joke. Not a laugh for a show. It was the kind of laugh you give someone when you want them to know they've charmed you. Intimate. Not loud, but warm. Alive. He stepped back. Let the water wait. Didn't confront. Didn't ask. Just stood in the hallway shadow and felt something tighten behind his ribs. The next morning, she was radiant. Made pancakes. Talked about hiking trails she wanted to explore. Kept looking at him like nothing had ever happened. Her smile was too bright. Her hands moved too fast. She dropped her coffee cup, and when it shattered, she laughed. Just a little too hard. Guess I'm clumsy today, she said. He knelt to help her, but her hand brushed his away before he could even touch the pieces. I've got it. Don't worry. That afternoon, he opened her laptop while she was in the shower. Not to snoop. Just instinct. The browser opened to a blank tab. History wiped clean. He checked the documents folder. Empty. Not even old work files. But in the recycle bin, there was one item. A PDF. He clicked it open. It was a receipt. From a boutique hotel downtown. 3 days ago. One night, premium suite. The name on the reservation wasn't hers. It was a man's. First name only. No address. Just a credit card ending in digits he didn't recognize. He stared at it, then closed it. Emptied the bin. When she walked out of the bathroom wrapped in her towel, steam curling behind her like a veil, she smiled at him again. Effortless, unbothered. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Just tired. She kissed him again, soft and distracted. Walked past him to the closet. And that was the last time he asked himself if he was imagining things. He wasn't searching anymore. Not hoping. Not wondering. Not accusing. Now he was watching. And she hadn't noticed yet. It was the slip of a word. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just one syllable misplaced in a story she'd told before. And suddenly the entire illusion unraveled like a poorly tied knot. They were sitting on the couch, side by side but miles apart, and she was talking about a lunch with her old college friend, Tasha, the one who always wore leopard print and posted wine selfies with the filters cranked too high. She mentioned the cafe on 6th, the one with the orange umbrellas, but something was off. She said they sat outside, joked about the pigeons being too bold, but the weather last Tuesday had been storming sheets of rain that kept people indoors and flooded the sidewalk. He remembered it vividly because he'd gotten stuck on the freeway for 2 hours, watched trees bend sideways while water slammed his windshield. It had been in every news alert, every group chat. But she didn't flinch, didn't even hesitate, said it so casually, so effortlessly, like the lie had been polished and prepped in advance. And that's when he knew. Not suspected, not feared. Knew. There was no way she'd mix that up. Not her, not the planner, not the perfectionist who lived in her calendar like it was scripture. The weather, the friend, the time, it was all fabricated, stitched together with the precision of someone who thought she was smarter than the story she was weaving. He turned to look at her, not with anger, but with the eyes of a man watching a spider crawl across the ceiling, calm, detached, calculating the motion before the strike. She didn't notice. She kept talking, kept gesturing, kept lying. Something inside him cooled to a level beyond hurt, beyond reaction. It was surgical now. No more second-guessing. No more hoping for a mistake. This was the mistake. This was the crack in the armor, and it was enough. He started mentally logging everything. Her new routine. The time she stepped out to clear her head. The odd urgency with which she checked her phone after 11 p.m. The way she'd stop mid-sentence and blink like she was rebooting when he asked her where she'd been. She was slipping, not because she didn't care, but because she thought he didn't. She believed she'd pulled it off, that he was too blind, too passive, too trusting to notice the gaps in her stories. And he let her believe it. That was the moment it turned. That was the moment the man she married disappeared. Not in fury, not in tears, but in strategy. He became the echo in the room, the shadow behind her words. He smiled more, agreed more, made her think the worst had passed. He started setting the pieces. Small, careful things. A second phone, tucked in the glove box of his car, loaded with tracking software and audio recorders. He synced it with the house Bluetooth, left it active whenever she had her calls with her mentor. He mirrored her emails, bought a duplicate of the perfume she kept in her purse, and tested which days she came home with a different scent lingering on her coat. And then, one night, while she was asleep with her back to him, mouth slightly open, breathing deep like someone with nothing to fear, he stepped out of bed and checked the office drawer she always kept locked. He'd already found the spare key. Inside were printed emails, real estate listings, a folder titled Next Steps. He didn't even need to read the contents to understand. She was planning an exit, a life without him. But not yet. Not until she had what she wanted. She was waiting for the perfect time to leave clean, to leave complete, with assets shifted and stories prepared. She thought she was in control, and that was her final mistake. Because from that moment forward, he stopped being her husband. He stopped being a partner, a fool, a placeholder in the background of her little transformation fantasy. He became a weapon. Not loud, not messy, but deliberate. Exact. She wouldn't see him coming. Not because he'd hide, but because she'd already stopped looking. She thought she'd won. But he was only just starting to play. It started at dinner, just like any other evening, except it wasn't. He'd made reservations at the rooftop restaurant she'd always said she loved, the one with the skyline view and candles flickering in glass domes. She arrived looking radiant, too radiant for someone who'd claimed to be swamped with back-to-back client calls. Her makeup was fresh. Her dress was new. She smiled when she saw him, but her eyes scanned the room like she was looking for someone else. He stood to kiss her cheek, and she turned just slightly, just enough to make it land beside her mouth. He didn't flinch, just helped her into her seat, poured her a glass of the Merlot she used to call her favorite, though she hadn't touched it in months. They talked about the usual things, work, errands, how she thought she might start a podcast. She spoke in soft, airy tones like nothing was wrong, like nothing had ever been wrong. But beneath the candlelight, her phone lit up twice. Both times, she flipped it over with the same casual flick, smiling harder than necessary to cover it. That's when he leaned back, finally tired of the theater. I spoke to Tasha today, he said, voice calm, low. She said she hasn't seen you in months. There was a pause, a beat too long. Her smile twitched. Oh, that's weird. I must have mixed up the day or something. You said it was last Tuesday. You mentioned the pigeons. But it was storming, remember? Flood warnings. She blinked, laughed softly. I don't know. Maybe it was a different day. You always remember the weather, kind of obsessive, don't you think? He didn't respond, just looked at her. And the silence filled the space between them like smoke. I mean, really, she added, smiling but now sharper. You're interrogating me over lunch? Are you that insecure? Insecure. He tilted his head. No, I just like facts. Like this one, he reached into his jacket and placed a folded paper on the table. Her name wasn't on it. Just a man's first name and a boutique hotel address. Her eyes flicked to it and then away, like it burned. Her smile dropped, but only for a second. That's private. You went through my stuff. I watched you lie. Every day. Watched you walk around our house rehearsing someone else's script. I stopped looking for explanations when I realized you were creating a whole new life one lie at a time. Her voice went brittle. You're making something out of nothing. That hotel wasn't what you think. Then tell me what it was. He leaned forward now, elbows on the table, his eyes locked on hers. Don't lie. Just try. Say one honest thing tonight. She stared, jaw tight, lips slightly parted like the words were struggling to form. Then the deflection came. I've been unhappy for a long time. You're cold. You never change. I needed space. He laughed. Low. Sharp. Space? You mean lies? Dress rehearsals? All those nights you came home humming like you'd just been kissed under a different sky, was that space? Or just practice for the next man? Her eyes darted around. She lowered her voice. Keep your voice down. No, he said, still quiet, but sharper now. You don't get to decide how this ends. Not after you already planned your exit. I saw the real estate listings. I saw the emails. You were building a life without me while sleeping in my bed. I wasn't going to leave, she snapped, the mask cracking. I just needed options. I was trying to figure things out. He nodded slowly. And while you figured things out, I paid the bills, kept your secrets, smiled when you kissed me with someone else's breath in your mouth. That hit. Her eyes flinched. Her mouth opened, but nothing came. Tell me, he continued, voice low but rising in intensity, was I ever in the plan? Or was I just the man you practiced loyalty on before you performed it for someone better? She looked around again, her voice breaking. Can we not do this here? He smiled then, for the first time in weeks. Why not? You lied in public. You smiled in photos. You played the role of the perfect wife when it benefited you. So let's finish it here. She reached for the paper, tried to crumple it, but he grabbed her wrist, not hard, just firm. Don't. That's not going anywhere. Just like your stories. They linger. They rot. Her face contorted, something between anger and panic. You don't understand. You've never understood me. You were always so closed off. And yet I never lied, he said. I never pretended to be someone else. I never humiliated you. But you, he exhaled sharply. You smiled through betrayal like it was a self-care routine. Her lip quivered. You're not being fair. No, he said. I'm being honest. That's what you never could handle. She looked away. For the first time, her eyes shone. Her fingers trembled around the stem of her wine glass. He didn't move. Didn't storm off. Didn't throw his chair back or cause a scene. He just watched. And when she realized he wasn't going to scream or plead or fight, she unraveled. Right there at the table, beneath the flickering candlelight, where she once told him she loved him more than life itself. She followed him into the elevator like a storm follows heat, all fury and desperation packed into a frame that once held poise. Her heels clicked too fast, her breath came too loud, and her eyes, once so careful, so calculating, now twitched with panic. The doors closed and the silence wrapped around them, sterile and bright. You're overreacting, she spat, half whisper, half plea. We've had worse fights. This isn't worth throwing everything away over. He didn't look at her. Just watch the floor numbers tick down, each one a countdown to her reckoning. You don't even see what you're doing, she pressed, voice rising. You think you're so noble, so calm. But you've never been emotionally available. Never really listened. And now you're playing victim? Please. He turned to her then, slowly, like a man choosing which weapon to unsheath. Emotionally available, he said, voice soft, dangerous. I sat through every empty conversation, every fake laugh, every late-night shift that was just a cover for another lie. I was there, and you were already gone. Don't call that unavailability. Call it survival. She flinched, but recovered. You think you're perfect? She snapped. You think you're some kind of saint? You were distant. You always kept the wall up. Maybe if you just let me in, he cut her off without raising his voice. You had the keys. You just preferred to pick the locks on someone else's door. She stared, mouth open, But he continued. You didn't cheat because I was cold. You cheated because you wanted to feel adored without earning it. You wanted the high without the effort. You wanted a mirror, not a partner. Her face contorted, fury breaking into something wetter. Messier. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did, she said, quiet now, almost trembling. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, she almost mistook it for softness. God, I hope not, he replied. Because what you called love was manipulation dressed as affection. It was silence where there should have been truth. It was watching me bleed just to make sure you still had color in your cheeks. She took a step back, hitting the wall of the elevator. Her voice cracked. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. We can rebuild. He shook his head once. You don't rebuild on ash. You burn what's left, so nothing grows there again. The doors opened to the lobby, bright with chandeliers and the hushed conversations of strangers pretending not to listen. She followed him, grasping at his sleeve now, makeup cracking at the corners of her eyes. Please, she said, voice breaking. We had good years. Doesn't that count for something? He turned in the middle of the floor, facing her under the cold gaze of people trying not to stare. It does, he said. It counts as the time I gave someone who never existed. It counts as the years I spent loving a role you auditioned for but never deserved. She looked around, blinking back tears, aware now of the audience, the whispers. Can we talk privately? She begged. Please don't do this here. He leaned in slightly, voice barely above a breath. You had all the privacy in the world when you buried the truth. Now it deserves light. She reached for him again, and he stepped back, just once. Not a flinch. A line. And that's when it hit her. That he wasn't angry. He wasn't vindictive. He was done. And nothing terrifies a liar more than indifference. Her voice cracked one last time, raw now, pleading, exposed. I made a mistake. No, he said, the final word like a scalpel. You made a series of choices. This is just the bill coming due. She fell quiet, trembling now, mascara threading down her cheekbones. He didn't move, didn't comfort, didn't smirk. Just stood there, composed, still. People watched, some pretending not to, others openly transfixed. And in that silence, his final silence, she realized it was over. Not just the marriage, but the control, the script, the illusion. He turned without a word and walked away, leaving her standing there in the lobby with nothing but her reflection in the glass, and even that wouldn't meet her eyes. It took less than a year for the collapse to complete. The woman who once walked rooms like she owned the air within them now drifts like a ghost through hallways that no longer open for her. Her lover, an ambitious executive with a habit of discarding women the moment they lose their shine, left her 2 months after the confrontation, once her name began circling among HR departments and industry whispers caught wind of questionable ethics. The side project she'd been building behind my back lost funding, and her mentor stopped replying. The apartment she moved into, the one she'd picked from real estate listings while still sleeping beside me, grew cold and empty once the lies began catching up and the rent payments fell behind. The friends she thought would rally, the ones who smiled during her new beginning, either faded out quietly or blocked her outright when their own partners began asking questions. Even her own sister, once her confidant, cut ties after learning the full story, especially when she discovered how far the betrayal reached. But she still calls me. Still texts. Always at night. Always just after midnight. Always after enough time has passed for her pride to slip into regret. The first time, she left a voicemail, voice thick with tears, trembling, saying, I still love you. I know I hurt you, but we were soulmates. Please, just talk to me. I listened to it once, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to answer. She wasn't speaking to the man she betrayed. She was speaking to a memory, a version of me that no longer exists. The last time she showed up at my door, I didn't open it. I watched her from the upstairs window as she stood there in the rain, soaked and shivering, arms crossed tightly, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She waited 15 minutes, left a note tucked into the doorframe. Please, just one conversation. I don't recognize who I am without you. That was the most honest thing she's ever said, because the version of herself she crafted, the strong, untouchable woman who had the world at her feet, only existed while someone else carried her weight. She fed on admiration, dependence, control. And when the mirror cracked, when people saw her not as mysterious but manipulative, not empowered but entitled, she became the one thing she never prepared to be: irrelevant. The last message I received from her was a photo, an old one from our trip to Greece. We were standing by the cliffs, laughing. She captioned it, Do you ever miss this? I didn't reply. Because what she doesn't understand is that the memory doesn't even sting anymore. I don't hate her. I don't wish her pain. I just don't see her anymore. Not as the woman I loved. Not as the one who hurt me. Just a stranger with a shared past. That's the cruelest consequence for someone like her. Not fire, not fury, but apathy. That her voice no longer has power. That her tears fall in silence. That she became a ghost haunting a story no one's telling anymore. And I moved on. I rebuilt. Not with revenge, but with precision. She burned a bridge she thought I'd never walk away from. I didn't just walk. I paved a better road. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from and what you would have done if it were your wife.